In the heart of a quiet village called Okpuno-Ibe, surrounded by green forests and the lull of birdsong, lived a poor girl named Onyinyechi, whose name meant God's gift. But to many in the village, Onyinyechi was anything but a gift. They called her names, mocked her ragged clothes, and whispered behind her back. Her mother, Nkemdilim, had once been the beauty of the village, gentle, graceful, and full of wisdom. Her father, Papa Obinna, was a humble farmer who loved his family dearly, but fate had its own plans. First, Onyinyechi's mother died after a long illness. Then, barely a year later, Papa Obinna followed, crushed by grief and overwork. Left alone, Onyinyechi became the responsibility of her stepmother, Madame Ijoma, a proud and vain woman who had 2 daughters of her own, Adaora and Chimamanda. From the day her father was buried, Madame Ijoma's house became a prison. Onyinyechi was no longer a child, but a servant, waking before the cock crowed, scrubbing the compound, washing the dishes, pounding yam, and fetching water from the stream miles away. Worse still, Madame Ijoma and her daughters delighted in mocking her. "Ugly duckling," they called her. "See how your hair is like palm fronds. Look at your oversized feet. Who will marry you? Even the goats will run away." The girls in the village joined in the laughter. Onyinyechi had no fine clothes, no jewelry, and her body was always covered in soot from the firewood kitchen. But she bore it all silently. At night, she would sit by the old mango tree and speak to the moon, whispering her dreams into the wind. One day, great news swept through Okpuno-Ibe like Harmattan wind. The king's only son, Prince Somadina, was returning from America. He had studied abroad and was now ready to take a wife. But the queen insisted he marry a maiden from their homeland, a woman of culture and beauty. To find her, a great maidens' contest was announced. All young girls of marriageable age were invited to the palace for a grand festival where the prince would choose his bride. The girls would dance, showcase their beauty, and wear their finest wrappers and beads. The village buzzed with excitement. Adaora and Chimamanda spent days preparing. Madame Ijoma sold a goat to buy them new clothes and golden earrings. She also visited the best weaver to braid their hair with cowries. Onyinyechi, however, was forbidden to go. "You, go to the palace," Madame Ijoma laughed. "With what face? You'll disgrace us." The night before the festival, Onyinyechi wept silently beneath the mango tree. The wind rustled the leaves, and a soft voice echoed in the air. "My child, why do you cry?" She looked up and gasped. There, under the moonlight, stood a glowing figure. It was her mother, Nkemdilim, dressed in white, her skin radiant like early dawn. "Mama," Onyinyechi whispered, "I have come because your tears reached the land of the spirits. Tomorrow you shall go to the palace. But remember, true beauty is not in beads or wrapper, it is in the heart." With a wave of her hand, the ghost mother summoned a white calabash from the earth. It opened, revealing the most beautiful wrapper made of gold threads, beaded sandals, and a delicate gilet that shimmered like sunrise. Her hair transformed into long black waves, and her skin glowed like fresh palm oil. Nkemdilim gently dressed her daughter. "Go now, but return before sunset, for by then the charm will fade." At the palace, the grounds were filled with drummers, dancers, and maidens dressed in lace, velvet, and fine Ankara. Adaora and Chimamanda stood confidently, thinking no one could outshine them. That was until a mysterious maiden arrived, quiet, graceful, and glowing like the morning star. Everyone turned to look. "Who is she?" they murmured. Even the queen leaned forward. Prince Somadina couldn't take his eyes off her. One by one, the maidens were called. They danced, greeted the elders, and curtsied. When it was Onyinyechi's turn, she moved like water, soft, confident, and full of grace. Her voice when she greeted the king was like music, and her smile warmed the hearts of all. When the prince stood, he pointed directly at her. "This is the one," he said. Gasps filled the air. Madame Ijoma nearly fainted. "No, that's Onyinyechi. She's nobody." The queen looked at her with disdain. "Nobody? A true queen shows humility and strength. This girl holds both." Onyinyechi knelt. "I am the daughter of Nkemdelim and Obina. I do not seek the prince's hand. I only wanted to dance for my mother." The prince knelt beside her. "You have already captured my heart." Cheers erupted. The prince placed a royal coral necklace around her neck, but as the sun dipped behind the hills, her wrapper began to dim, her beads faded, and her glowing skin dulled. A murmur rose in the crowd, but the prince smiled. "This is her true form, and she is still the most beautiful among you all." Onyinyechi and Prince Somadina were married in a grand ceremony that lasted 7 days. She became known as Queen Onyinye, the Queen of Grace. Madame Ijoma and her daughters were sent out of the village in shame, and the villagers who once mocked Onyinyechi now sang songs in her name. And sometimes in the quiet of the palace garden, Onyinyechi would sit beneath a mango tree and whisper her thanks into the breeze, knowing her mother's spirit was always near. After the drums of celebration faded and the palace gates closed behind the cheering crowds, Queen Onyinyechi sat quietly on her royal stool, her heart still beating with wonder. She had gone from a girl mocked in the village to the beloved wife of Prince Somadina, all within a single moon's turning. But the story did not end there. Though she now lived among silk curtains and golden goblets, Onyinyechi's soul remained humble. Every morning she walked through the palace gardens, speaking to the breeze where she believed her mother's spirit lingered. "Thank you, Mama," she'd whisper. "I will make you proud." As queen, she asked Prince Somadina for one thing, to visit the village of Okpuno Ibe once every month, not for ceremony, but for service. Together they would build a new learning center for orphaned girls, a cloth-weaving workshop for widows, and a clean water borehole by the stream where Onyinyechi once fetched water with a clay pot balanced on her head. The people began to call her Onyinyoma, the good gift, but not all hearts rejoiced at her reign. Far away in a run-down hut at the edge of another village, Madame Ijoma boiled bitter-leaf soup over a dying fire. Her wealth had crumbled, her daughters Adaora and Chimamanda had been rejected by suitors for their arrogance, and people whispered that they were cursed. Then one day they heard the story. "The girl you called ugly, she is now Queen Onyinye." Madame Ijoma nearly choked on her soup. "What kind of village madness is this? That witch's daughter?" she shouted. She could not rest. That night, she sat by her broken door and wept, not from sorrow, but from burning jealousy. Desperate, Madame Ijoma sought out Madame Nwaka, a wicked herbalist known for selling powdered misfortune. For a price, she could make a queen fall from grace. "I want Onyinye to be hated," Madame Ijoma hissed. "Make the prince despise her, make her barren, let her fall from her throne." Madame Nwaka gave her a black calabash, sealed with red string. "Place this under her sleeping mat, and her destiny will turn to dust." Dressed in rags, Madame Ijoma traveled to the palace, pretending to be a beggar. She cried at the gates, "My daughter was once under your roof. Have mercy, queen!" Onyinyechi, still tender-hearted, let her in. That night, as Onyinyechi and Somadina slept, Madame Ijoma crept in and slid the calabash beneath the mat. But as she turned to sneak away, a cold wind swept through the room. And then the ghost of Nkemdelim appeared. Her eyes were like fire. "You will not harm my daughter again." With a scream, Madame Ijoma was thrown back by a burst of white light. The guards found her shaking and unconscious. In her hand, the cracked calabash, its dark charm now broken. When she awoke, she could no longer speak. Her tongue was tied, her eyes clouded. The king's healers said it was a curse of guilt and wickedness. Adaora and Chimamanda came to plead before Queen Onyinye. "We mocked you. We were cruel. Forgive us, sister." Onyinyechi, after deep thought, replied, "You will work in the palace kitchen for 1 year. Let the smoke teach you humility, as it once taught me." They bowed in gratitude. Time passed. Onyinyechi soon felt the soft flutter of life in her womb. When the news spread that she was with child, the kingdom celebrated for 7 days. Bells rang in the tower. Dancers filled the courtyards. Prince Somodina wept with joy. And on a cool Harmattan morning, Queen Onyinye gave birth to twin girls, as beautiful and radiant as dawn. She named them Nkem and Obianuju, one after her mother, and the other meaning born into abundance. Her family was whole again. Years later, children in the land would gather in the courtyard to hear the tale of the girl who was called ugly, and how she became a queen, and the mango tree by the village still stood. Sometimes, on moonlit nights, they said, you could see the glowing figure of Nkemdilim sitting beneath it, smiling at the destiny her daughter fulfilled. The end.